I've seen some questions have already been addressed, and there are a couple of questions. And I would like to invite all the presenters, please turn on your camera, and for all the audience, please continue to type your questions using the Q&A feature in the Zoom. The first question is for Donna, and there's a comment on why you use cheese as an ingredient instead of using the generic cheese, not further specified. What is the difference?
So thank you for that question. And cheese as an ingredient is, the codes that are as ingredients are only used to develop recipes. They are not used to code, an intake with what we eat in America. So we developed cheese as an ingredient in sandwiches to reflect the different types of cheese on the sandwich. So we didn't have to burden the respondents and also have a whole bunch of different codes for a ham sandwich with Swiss, a ham sandwich with cheddar, and all that. So we developed that unique for the sandwiches. And then we developed the cheese queso to represent the cheese that would be in most of the Hispanic type food items. Now, cheese NFS is used when a respondent does not know what type of cheese they ate. So if you ask them, they had some kind of cheese and crackers, they didn't know what kind of cheese. So it was coded as cheese NFS. And currently that is, I think it's 60% cheddar and 40% American cheese. So it just represents a different nutrient profile than cheese as an ingredient in sandwiches. So I hope that answers it. If not, type in more in the Q&A, Danielle.
Thank you, Donna. The next question is for Lisa. And do you have a sense of how many recipes were fairly well represented by foods already in the database, and how many unique single ingredient foods you needed to add?
Right. So we added over 100 new foods to the database, so that we felt we did not have, adequate recipes or foods already. In terms of the single ingredient things like the jute leaves, I think that it was only, and my database group's probably gonna, I'm shooting from the hip here, but I think it was under 10. It wasn't a huge number of foods we had to add in order to add these recipes to the, new dishes to the database.
Thank you. The next question is also for you, Lisa. There's a question asking, like you mentioned that you sometimes had to add ingredients to the NCC database, and they were curious as to how many new ingredients were added to the NDSR 2021-2022 as a result of this project.
Yeah, that's where I think it's under 10. I'm just not going to know the exact number. It wasn't a huge, very large number. On our website, our latest newsletter is posted, and we list all the foods that we added, and that includes ingredients. So if someone were really curious as to what specific ingredients are added, you can find it there.
Right, thank you. And then the next question is for all speakers. There's a question as to how do we get more ethnic food into FNDDS? How does this circular ecosystem of enhance what we eat in American FNDDS capture unusual foods that are not already in the database?
I think it's a bit about the surveys, nutrition surveys, to be interested in these ethnic populations by keeping the sample size large, and by maybe prioritizing this these population groups. In NDNS, for example, in the UK, the focus is of course the general public, but then perhaps we need more larger sample size in order to capture these ethnic groups. So I'm afraid they are not always a priority. So if there is interest on that data, there will be more data. Yeah, more funding.
With scanner, with food scanner data, it is what's purchased. Unfortunately, and so we collect some ethnic foods, especially for the mainstream grocery stores. Some of the larger ethnic grocery store chains are in our data, but at this point, there are some limitations there, and it's proving to be a little frustrating, but something we're continuing to work on and getting that included in our scanner data.
Any other comments from the rest of the panel?
I'll comment on NHANES, that What We Eat in America, and we're trying to do a better job for incorporating ethnic dishes. And we did that with the tacos and burritos. And we made them represent, even though they represent a variety of different products, they don't just represent what, quote, Americans would eat at a fast food place, but they also try to capture the difference that you would find in a true Hispanic restaurant where you would get different tacos and burritos. So we are working on that. And even though we have some ethnic foods, we are, continuing to add more ethnic dishes.
That's
great, thank you.
I'll just add one thing to say that,
sure.
At NCC, I think one thing that we've realized, there's people maintaining databases, and FNDDS is the same boat. Like there's so much need, there's so much work to be done and so little time, right? You're constrained. But we have decided that when we get requests for new foods, that we're prioritizing these kinds of foods. Like it's, they're bumped up the list now in priority because we know, we're more cognizant of the health inequities and the role that our databases play in that research.
I will also say that when we do find ethnic foods in the scanner data, we do link them to FNDDS so that we can import the FPED data. It's obviously not precise in our importation, but it does work for, kind of epi surveillance.
Cool, thank you. The next question is for Donna. There's a question about how is soy yogurt coded in the updated FNDDS? Is it still dairy equivalent, or there is a separate category for soy product?
I don't think we changed any of the ingredients for the soy yogurt this time. And I'm not quite sure of what, and this is what, if it's a dairy equivalent, this would be with FPED. So we will have to look into that, and we will have to look into all these dairy equivalents. And I do know that Food Data Central is starting to analyze these products and adding them to foundation foods. So when we do get that information from them, we will certainly incorporate it into FNDDS. So I hope that answers. If not, send me a question or send me an email, and I'll try to, figure that out better if it deals with FPED rather than FNDDS.
Thank you. The next question is again for Lisa. How did you manage a commercial branded product like prepackaged snacks?
We did not add any that were specific to these cooking traditions. We really focused on the recipes, home prepared type foods, and that might be a next thing, is to look at some of the marketplaces where packaged foods are sold and adding some of those.
Cool. And then I have a question for Birdem. And as the NDNS move to the web-based data record, does this mean that it will be done virtually only without in-person data collection? And if so, can you please explain as to what be the compliance and quality check for those data records?
Sorry, can I just take the question again to hear it well?
Sure. Question is, as the NDNS moves to the web-based data records, does this mean that it will be done only virtually without the need for in-person data collection? And if so, what can you please explain as to what will be the compliance and quality checks for those data records collected online?
Yeah. Yes. So NDNS is now collecting this data online, and it is self-reported. But for people, for respondents who cannot have the facility, who are not using or need assistance using this technology, we provide interviewer assistance. So they do have a nurse visiting them, and they do assist them, or they do have, phone assistance. So we, in our team, we currently also provide them telephone assistance, or we complete the intake in our team through a phone call. In terms of the quality, yes, so we have already done an evaluation exercise, which is published, which is available if you can search in Google evaluation NDNS. Bless you. And also we are going to have a double label water validation study, which will happen soon, and then that also will give us more reassurance on the quality of data. So it is bedtime at the moment. That's why this child is still awake.
Okay. Thank you. And I have another question for Andy. The question is, for the household profile data, do you have the information about race ethnicity of the household? And if so, was there any associations between race ethnicity and the purchase pattern for the added sugar?
Right. So since this is a household panel, the data that are collected on race and ethnicity are of the primary shopper. So that could be the entire household, one person in the household, or some parts of the household. There were relationships, but the effect was somewhat small, and also because I chose not to present them this time, but in the final paper, we will include them. And like I said, I want to go back and get that produce so the natural sugar is correct. But yeah, there was some, but I'm not final with it yet.
Okay, thank you. And the next question is for Lisa, and I'm just curious as to the NCC data set that you guys have right now. Does it include any food from the Hmong population in Minnesota?
I have to look into that. We have a lot of Southeast Asian dishes for different Asian countries and India, but now I'm wishing my database people were here and answering these questions. They would know right off the top of their head. I'm not sure about specifically Hmong foods.
Sure, thank you, Lisa. And then another question for all of the presenters. Since the session is about consumer behaviors, and there is also usually a discrepancy between the consumer survey with his actual consumer behavior. So what people say may not be necessarily be what people do. And I was wondering what challenges does this pose to the nutrition research? And do you have any recommendations as how a nutrition scientist can potentially address this as we continue our journey here?
Well, the really nice thing about scanner data is it is what people purchase. And they may not, for the household panel, they may not report everything. And in fact, we have statistical properties that have looked at that. But the store scanner data, we know what's coming over those checkout counters. And so it's what is there. We have it every week for all of the stores included at the UPC level. So it's super detailed. It makes a nice check. But again, it is only food at home. It does not include the food away from home.
Any comments from other presenters on this topic? Nope, I think we have all of those questions addressed, and I think everyone have maybe 4 minutes back.
I'm looking at my results for race and ethnicity. Let's see. So, summary stats, sorry, wrong table. I apologize, I thought I had them right here. Okay. Households with at least one member who identified as Black generally had more added sugar. It cut across all income groups. For Asians, it was slightly less, except for the low income group. Mixed race or other, there was no difference. And Hispanic, for the whole sample and the highest income sample, it was less added sugar.
I see. Thank you, Andy. Actually, I have one final question for Donna. As the enhanced stop data collection during the pandemic, so I would expect that there will be no FNDDS 2021, 2022 in a few years. Is that right?
Did you ask me about an FNDDS 21, 22?
Yeah, is that right? Like we won't have that data in a few years because of the enhanced has stopped data collection, is that right?
Well, the collection has started back for NHANES. So they are currently collecting data for now. So we will,
Okay.
well, depending on their sample size and what they get, but yes, they are collecting data again. A little bit different format, but NHANES has started back. So, we hope to have another version of FNDDS out and more data to be released.
That's great. That's great. Exactly.
Of course, it's up to, how things go, how they continue to go. And we hope for the best.
Thank you for all the great work. Okay, with that, I'd like to thank all the presenters for the great presentation and for all the audience for the engaging discussion. Thank you. And we have 15 minutes break, I believe.
Thank you.
Thank you.